problem, so we have to pick either Facebook or YouTube.
It's under recording now.
Michael, can you make me a co-host so I can manage the Q&A, please?
I'll do that.
Okay.
So Susanna, what you were saying earlier makes sounded damn dramatic. What's expected to happen today? It sounds like a lot of covert stuff is going on.
Somebody from Richmond is going to say something harsh.
All right.
Yeah.
We don't know what, but you know what? It's out of place.
Well, you just wait till just wait until you hear what I have to say about CalCare. Then you'll hear harsh.
Oh, well. Oh, yeah. You will get no complaints there.
Okay.
Okay, we got a couple more people, a couple members. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, Liz. We got Sherry, Lori. We got a lot of people here. Ina, yay. So, okay, you guys ready to start?
I sent Mark a note about CalCare. That influences what's going on with CalCare.
I see that message. Thank you, Gordon. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I
Okay.
did know about that. Yes.
Okay, here we go. This is it. Okay, welcome everybody. You're at a very special meeting of our Revolution East Bay tonight. This is our first 2022 endorsement meeting for progressive candidates. So that's what's mostly going to go on. We have 9 or 10 candidates that are going to be here tonight and speak with us. And after that, we're going to have 3 of our members, Igor Trigub, Mark Van Landen, and Alfred Tu, are going to speak about certain issues and things, just informational things and letting people know what's going on around here. And that will be the meeting. So anyway, after the meeting, like in about 2 or 3 days, we're going to send out ballots to members that are in good standing so they can vote on who our Revolution East Bay should endorse. And to be a voter, you have to be in good standing with us, which means you should go to our website and join up. Yeah, it's either $27 a year or it's $5 if you're a senior or low income or whatever. We don't question it. But we want people, if they want to vote, we want them to join up. And also there's a participation requirement that you have participated with us in some way at least 2 times in the past year, whether it's going to a meeting or an activity or whatever. Anyway, so I guess we're ready to move on. My name is Carol Coyote and I'm the co-chair of this organization. And much of the introductions and things will be done by myself and Susanna Williams, who is the other co-chair. And so we're ready to start now. So our wondrous co-chair, Susanna, is going to start introducing. Go for it, Susanna.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. And candidates and candidate staff, please drop your candidates' contact information, Facebook, social media, website, donation page, whatever. Feel free to drop that in chat so we all will have access to it. So first up, I am super proud to endorse this candidate. And I know Champagne's here. Is Dinah here? Oh, yes, yay, she's here. Okay, so our first speaker today is the fabulous Dinah Beckton. Dinah has been our district attorney in Contra Costa County for a little bit now, and she is running for re-election. She was elected during the primary with over 50% of the vote on the last election. So we'd like to see that happen again. And she's done amazing things for Contra Costa County, where I personally live. So I am thrilled to introduce and welcome Dinah Beckton to our candidate forum.
Yay! Yay!
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. And you guys, I know I look a little different than I normally look. So
outdoors doing some things. So thank you so much for having me. I won't take up too much of your time. I'm Dinah Beckton. I like to say that I am running on a platform of safety, justice, and progress. And as you heard 4 years ago, voters in Contra Costa elected me as the district attorney with overwhelming support. And I walked into an office that was primarily hostile to me and to progressive ideas, but I'm proud to say that I've worked hard to deliver safety, justice, and progress for Contra Costa County. These are challenging times, and people do want to feel safe in their homes and communities because we all deserve that. And we have, so I want to take this minute to talk about promises made and promises kept. We've held those who've harmed victims accountable. We've made our office more transparent, reducing racial disparities and moving beyond a singular reliance on incarceration. As the district attorney, we've made our county safer by charging those who have been involved in organized theft rings, as well as working with district attorneys and law enforcement agents to bring to the individuals, not only businesses, but small businesses as well. We have shifted our priorities away from low-level, nonviolent crime, instead focused on violent crime. Our Safe Streets Task Force concentrates on those who are using gangs and violence in our communities. We are combating hate crimes, and I also established the office's first human trafficking unit so that we can use prevention and education as well as prosecution when necessary for those who are committing crimes by using people for labor and or sex. We've reimagined youth justice. We have gotten $1 million to establish the county's first restorative justice youth diversion program. It's pre-filing and trauma-informed. We've also started a Reimagining Youth Justice Committee so that we can begin to look at ways to have our kids supervised in our community as opposed to being locked up at the rate of over 550,000 per year. We've reviewed old cases to determine if those sentences are still in the interest of justice. I got $1 million recently to increase our work there, and we've welcomed home so many from prison now. We've dismissed old marijuana convictions that have kept people from getting housing and jobs. And then we've also made tremendous progress towards holding accountable both law enforcement and also public officials who have abused their power. Let's see, I was sworn in to do things very differently. And together, I believe that we have built change that can last in Contra Costa County. But there's a tremendous amount of work to still do. I'm running for re-election to continue the important work of making our community safer, but also our system fair for everyone. I'm asking for your support to help re-elect me for district attorney. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dinah. So anybody who has questions for Dinah, please raise your hand. You'll get an opportunity. Gordon, you've got your hand raised? Or not? Gordon?
That's a thumbs up. That's all it is, not a hand raise.
Okay, sorry. Okay, Mark, you've got your actual hand raised and not just the thumb. Go ahead.
My thumb and all 4 fingers. District Attorney Dinah Beckton. I know that your race is going to turn into a national race. I know that super PACs across the nation, right-wing super PACs, MAGA super PACs, have targeted you amongst their top 10 so-called social justice district attorneys that they want to take down. Why do you think so much money and so many people who live outside your constituency want to see you out of office?
Well, we have a lot of people who want to see things done the way they were always done, right? And that is the old failed policies of the past that have led us to be the most over-incarcerated country in the world, as well as a system that has huge racial and ethnic disparities. And so those of us who are doing this work are targeted, as you have mentioned, not only locally, but nationally, by those who want to stop the work and take us back to the way that things used to be. And so we are committed to continuing the work, but we need all of your help to keep us in these positions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions for DA Becton? Going once, going twice. Okay, everybody, Champagne has dropped all of her campaign information in chat. Thank you, Champagne. So thank you, Dinah, so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. And I'm sure I'll see you out and about at other events. And she's got a campaign kickoff coming up next weekend, I believe. And the info on that is in chat as well. So thank you. Carol, back to you.
Okay. Okay, we have two people here tonight running for the same office. We have Liz Ortega and Jennifer Easton, both running for State Assembly District 20. So we've put them side by side, so it'll help people keep it straight. Our first one of the speakers is going to be Liz Ortega, and Liz has been like a really strong labor leader for like over 20 years. I know she was very active with AFSCME back in the day when I was in it. Also, she's been like really fighting for equitable minimum wage to support working families. She's currently on the Alameda County Vaccine Equity Task Force, where she's really been working to get sick leave and hazard pay for frontline workers and other providers. She's got a lot of accomplishments, but I'm going to let Liz tell you who she is and why she's running. Go ahead, Liz, and welcome.
Thank you, Carol. How much time do I have, by the way? I just want to make sure I stay on time.
Okay, you have like 45 minutes speaking, and then maybe up to 3 minutes for questions or something like that. Okay.
Okay, I will not take that long for speaking. So thank you all
45
for
minutes? 45 minutes?
4 to 5 minutes.
Got it. I will not take that long, 45 or 4 to 5 minutes, but thank you all for being here, revolutionaries. My name is Liz Ortega, and as Carol mentioned, I am running for Assembly District 20. I've decided to run for the seat because for over 20 years, I've worked to deliver for the working families in our community through my work within labor. I've been in labor since I was 21 years old. Even though I was a single mom working a full-time job, I managed to, take on even more bigger fights, more responsibility, and really deliver for my community. And that's why I am running. The other reason is because just my personal story, I truly believe in the American dream. And that my parents brought me here when I was 3 years old as an undocumented child was because they believed that if they worked hard, they could buy a home, they could, provide an education for their kids. And just the mere fact that I'm speaking to you all today and even considered running for this seat is a testament to that dream. Unfortunately, that dream is going away for way too many families. And just having been the leader of the Alameda Labor Council now for, 2 terms, and most of which had been under COVID, has really opened everyone's eyes to the income inequality that we face in this country, something that many of us have always known, but now it's been laid bare for everyone to see. And so in the midst of this, we've been fighting for making sure that there's affordable housing in our communities. It's the number one thing that I hear about, the fact that we have so many folks who are homeless, who need mental health, who need healthcare, period. We have so many folks who can never buy a home now because the prices are so crazy high, and speculators are purchasing properties and then just leaving them there so they can make a profit. And then the fact that our rents are just too damn high. 80% of our income is going to rents. All of these things are reasons why I am running. The other reason is healthcare. We just saw AB 1400 fail. Part of the reason, at 18 and 21, I ended up as a single mother with 2 little boys. One of them had asthma. And I always worked to make sure that I had health insurance for him. And that was number one priority for me as a mother with a child who had all these health issues. So now that, you know, we had AB 1400 fail, it gives me even more fire to get in there and fight for it, to carry, push it forward, and make those that didn't want to vote for it actually tell us why they didn't want to vote for it. For over 5 years, I worked at AFSCME as a lobbyist for the University of California workers. And that is the one thing that I did see in the middle of the night. I saw all these legislators and the governor talk about and make deals when many of us were not there to have our voices heard, to talk about all the single moms, to talk about all the folks who are homeless, to talk about the immigrant workers who, you know, don't have access to paid sick leave, who were telling to stay home and calling essential all at the same time. I saw what it's like, and I saw what it's not like. And that's why I've been doing what I've been doing for as long as I have, not just because I believe in it, but also because I know how to build coalitions and I know how to deliver. Please. And I know how to deliver. I've delivered vote after vote after vote. I know how to count. And I know how to work, how to bring people together. Because if we're ever going to get to what we need to make sure that we have the drive, we have the fire within us, but we also have the ability to build coalition to get us across the finish line. Otherwise, we're just going to have a pipe dream and nothing to deliver for those pipe dreams. So another reason I'm running is because I believe that I have, can, and will continue to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Does anybody have a question for Liz? Please raise your hand. Going once. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. If anybody's on the phone and can't raise their hand for whatever reason, please just speak up. Okay, no questions. Thank you so much for being here, joining us today. And make sure, and if you haven't already done it, drop your campaign info in chat. So we'll all have it. But
I also put my cell phone if folks want to contact me anytime, any time of the day or night. I'm here.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Back to you, Carol.
Okay, thank you so much, Liz. Our next candidate is also running for District 20, and her name is Jennifer Easton. I may be saying that wrong. I apologize. She's a nurse, a mother, a community leader. She's really spent her career as a nurse. She was a psychiatric nurse at SF General. She's now actually vice president of organizing for SEIU 1021. She's really fighting for people and for her community. And she brings a lot to us. And I'll let her tell you because she knows more than I do about how great she is. So Jennifer, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol, and good afternoon, everybody here at Our Revolution. It's really thrilling to be with you on this Sunday afternoon. It's such a beautiful day outside. I appreciate that you're spending your time here with all of us. And, you know, I haven't always been a registered nurse. I haven't always been a fighter for the people. I had to find my way here. I grew up in the South, in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I was often told to be seen and not heard. And that had an impact on me as a child. You know, I learned that to be safe as a Black person, you need to be quiet and do not necessarily speak up, even when you see injustices. So I left that. I came to California when my son was 1 year old, because I knew that I wanted something different for him. So we packed up our minivan. Just to date myself, this was about 18 and a half years ago. We had a TV VCR combo, 13-inch in the back of the car so that his little 1-year-old self could be entertained as we drove 7 long days from New Orleans to California. We watched Blue's Clues the entire ride. And when I got to California, things seemed to be good. You know, a few years went by, I found myself with a new son. So then I had 2 boys, a divorce, and then the real estate market crashed and it changed my life. 2007, 2008, the financial crisis forced me into bankruptcy, foreclosure. And that was when I realized like something's going wrong here. I have to change everything. And I went to nursing school. I was very fortunate to be able to attend a one-year accelerated program at Samuel Merritt University. And I came out on the other side a registered nurse and got a job at San Francisco General Hospital working in the psychiatric emergency room, which was a beautiful place to work, except for the fact that every door was locked. Clients typically came in with police wearing handcuffs. And I loved the work. It was incredibly stressful to be in that place. And after 5 years, I started working in the community in San Francisco with folks who still had a severe and persistent mental illness. But this time we're in different levels of our behavioral health system. I worked in the transitions division where we worked with people who had only access to a 24-hour treatment program all the way up to permanent housing in a board and care home. And it was there that one of my clients came to me and said, my permanent housing is going to be taken away. I'm being evicted. And when I learned of this eviction, I found out that there was a policy decision that had been made within the city leadership to fast track the opening of homeless shelters. And what didn't make sense to me is why we would close permanent housing to open temporary shelters when we really need both of these resources. We needed people to have their permanent housing, and we need people to have access to homeless shelters. And as I dug a little deeper, I just got more and more outraged that this was bad math. We needed to have that homeless shelter open somewhere else, and we needed to maintain my client's housing. And in order to prevent the closure and the eviction of my client's housing, we all together, me, my clients, and my colleagues at the site, staged a huge rally. And then we went to the Health Commission to let them know what was going on, to get their support, and they wouldn't listen to us. So we shut the meeting down. And we did that the next month. And by month number 3, the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco passed 3 pieces of legislation to keep those beds fully funded, fully occupied, and fully staffed. And people were like, oh my God, Jennifer, that's amazing. 3 pieces of legislation in 3 months at the supervisor's level. You need to move to San Francisco and run for office. And I was like, what? No, I'm just an advocate. I'm a nurse. This is what I was trained to do. And they were like, but this is really special. And my union, SEIU 1021, made me vice president of organizing right then and right there. But it was such an experience that one day when we were shutting down that Health Commission meeting at 5 p.m., the next morning I came to work at 8 a.m. and my computer was missing from my desk. I had put everything on the line as a worker to blow the whistle about a bad decision that the city made, and they threatened my livelihood. It was everything I could do to keep fighting. The next year, I got on a steering committee to put legislation on the ballot called Mental Health SF. You may have heard about it recently because it's just now being implemented after 2 years of delay during COVID. Mental Health SF was a landmark piece of legislation that was going to expand behavioral health care throughout the entire city and county in San Francisco. And
4 minutes.
Thank you. We also put it with a progressive tax to couple it so that we could fund this expansion. And it was a $150 million tax measure on the richest in San Francisco, excessive CEO income. And the voters said yes to both, to expanding behavioral health care and to taxing the richest people in the city. And it was then that I realized something special was happening. I came home to my unincorporated community of Ashland, where our supervisor, Nate Miley, appointed me to the Eden Municipal Advisory Council. Wilma Chan, may she rest in peace, appointed me to the Alameda Health System Board of Trustees, where I became chair of the Finance Committee over our $1 billion budget, learning all the things needed for governance, for implementing public health policy, and overseeing our 4 hospitals, one of which is our level 1 trauma center, one of which is our county psych hospital, and 2 community hospitals. And it is this experience and this dedication that I will bring to Sacramento as a working class organizer who is willing to put it all on the line to benefit all of us, especially the least.
Please finish up.
Thank you all so much for hearing me out today, and I'm ready to answer any questions you may have.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. So again, y'all know the drill. Any questions that you have for Jennifer, please raise your hand. Or anybody have any questions? And then I believe I saw, yes, I saw Jennifer's information is also posted in chat. So you guys can cruise on over there and volunteer, donate. Everybody needs money and volunteers these days. So that's how we win. Okay, I am not, oh, I actually, Igor, you have a question, go ahead.
I do have a question. Thank you so much, sister, for joining us. My question is, as you know, 65,000 renewable energy jobs in rooftop and local solar are on the line with the proposed California Public Utilities Commission decision and what the utilities are trying to push through the state legislature. What would be your response to this as a legislator?
Well, I have a few responses. One, I would love to see PG&E become a publicly owned and controlled utility where the profits that they have been earning year after year is used to cover the losses related to wildfires that have been caused by their negligence. I don't want to see that cost continue to come onto our shoulders as ratepayers. We already pay rates that are 80% higher than the rest of the nation. I also want to make sure that PG&E is doing all of the mitigation necessary to prevent future forest fires. You know, they say the fire season from 2021 by itself is going to cost about $40 to $45 billion in order to repair, fix, and get people back to where we're supposed to be. That's a lot of money. And PG&E is not going to be footing the bill for all of that. We are, as taxpayers and as ratepayers. I also want to see that solar energy is available and affordable to all of us. And that does not mean that we continue to protect PG&E's profits to do so. We need to be subsidizing rooftop solar for the entire state in order to make sure that we start to get ahead of where we already are, which is, according to an article I saw this morning, 400 counties, 400, there's not 400 counties in the city, 400 zip codes are already being impacted by 1.5% rise Celsius, which means we have hit the point of no return in 400 zip codes in the state. That's a little bit scary, y'all, because it means that we may be on a place where we can't get back. We have to turn back as much as we can around CO2 emissions because climate change is a crisis. Housing is a crisis. And if we try to address both at the same time, if we're not just thinking about PG&E's profits, if we imagine building green right now using the California Green New Deal as a recipe for success, we can put people to work in our communities. We can build housing that is green and carbon neutral, and we can also start to free ourselves of fossil fuel today. There's a recipe.
Please conclude your remark.
And I am ready to implement that recipe as your legislator in the assembly.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. And we have one more question. Sherry, go ahead.
Doesn't Liz get to answer that?
This isn't that type of forum.
Okay, I actually, thank you, Susanna. I have a general question of, I know there's been a lot of redistricting. So I would like someone to tell me exactly where District 20 is. And is the incumbent not running or running? And if there isn't an incumbent, what would you do different, each of you, Liz and Jennifer, than the person that has the office now?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer the question. I think Liz may already be away from this meeting,
but
okay. The incumbent is not running. His name was Bill Quirk, and he was a big supporter of PG&E and actually authored their bailout in 2018. I would not be doing that. No way would I be bailing out PG&E without holding them completely accountable and making sure that they are a publicly owned and controlled utility. I also, so the district includes Castro Valley, Hayward, Union City. It includes unincorporated areas like San Lorenzo, Fairview, Hayward Acres, Ashland, where I live, and now we have San Leandro. And on the eastern border, we have a tiny little bit of Pleasanton and Dublin. And I am running as a corporate-free candidate, which our incumbent never did. I will not take money from any fossil fuel company. I will not take money from any real estate developer, I will not take money from corporations, because I believe that we have to be held accountable to people, and we have to be able to serve the people with the best interest of the community at mind. And sometimes that is tainted when you take corporate donations. You know, I just went to Sacramento with Sunrise and with 350 Bay Area last winter, because I want to make sure that no Democratic candidate takes fossil fuel money. We need to get it out of our political process and out of our political system so that we can really be dedicated to our climate and the betterment of our future. And that is very different from our incumbent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Jennifer. Just to answer some questions that are popping up in chat, and I know Chris had that question as well. We have not set this up as an elected office specific forum where we will have all of the candidates that are running for that specific race answer the same questions. We have a limited amount of time here. All of the candidates are popping their contact information in chat. So anybody who would like to hear a specific candidate answer another question that's been asked, please feel free to contact that candidate directly. I don't think there's any candidates on our panel today that would not be thrilled to have you contact them and to talk to you. Yeah, so this is a different, we've got a lot of different candidates running for a lot of different races. So the questions are kind of all across the board. So hopefully that answers everybody's questions. Okay, Sherry was the last hand I saw up. So that brings us to our next candidate, right? Carol, unless I forgot something.
I think we're ready for the next candidate.
Okay, all right. And a lot of people joined us since I kind of made my little spiel earlier on. So I'll just kind of bring everybody up to speed here. It was brought to our attention that there was some sort of effort to, you know, maybe cause some issues with this particular meeting, shall we say. And we just want everybody to be respectful and professional in their questions, get to your point. If you have a question, ask it. Don't use this as a forum to go on about something completely unrelated or your own personal take on something. We have a limited amount of time. So with that, I'm going to introduce our next candidate. I think all of you know I'm from Contra Costa County and from Antioch. And we've had a not so good, and I'm being extremely polite here, person in office as sheriff. He is the absolute opposite of progressive. And as it sets right now, I want everybody to know this because the professional or the progressive movement, you know, we've got, you know, not happy thoughts about law enforcement in general for a lot of really good reasons. But I want everybody to be aware that anyone who runs for sheriff in Contra Costa County, and this is true, I think, for a lot of sheriff's offices, they have to hold certain certifications, and only at this point, law enforcement members hold those certifications. So that is something that is going along with anybody running for this particular role. So I'd like to introduce our next candidate. He is running for sheriff in Contra Costa County. We absolutely need and deserve a much better sheriff. Sheriff's office handles evictions. With everything happening coming out of the pandemic, there's going to be a lot of people losing homes. A lot of people already have. I would certainly like to see someone else managing that process. There's also a lot of you know, discussions about mental health. We've had our current sheriff using mental health money to expand his jail projects. So we definitely need a change here. So Ben Terrio is running for sheriff. Ben grew up on a Native American reservation in Montana. He has a very interesting background. He enlisted in the U.S. Air Force at 17 years of age. He served in the Iraq War. He is currently with the Richmond Police Department. So without further ado, I bring you Ben, and we will have Q&A afterwards. So take it away, Ben.
Thank you, Susanna. And thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to meet with you and for your consideration for endorsement. Like Susanna said, I'm Ben Terrio. I've been in law enforcement for over 13 years and part of a very forward-thinking police agency that was once highlighted by President Barack Obama as one of the most progressive and forward-thinking agencies in the country at the time. And I want to bring some of those lessons learned and those cultural issues and beyond to the sheriff's office in Contra Costa County. We currently have a sheriff who is just, quite frankly, not a public official. It's not out in all the communities. He's not engaged, and I want to change all that. We have for the past several years now made many different reforms within policing and law enforcement, and we need to go even further, and we need to be smart on those reforms. But that needs to happen, and currently the sheriff's office just is not doing that, and it's not up to date. I mean, they only finally just agreed to get body cameras within the past year, and I actually, quite frankly, think that has a lot to do with me talking about it on this campaign. It's just myself and the incumbent running, and we need to bring our county sheriff up to the modern age. One of the things I'd like to see changed majorly within law enforcement, but also use the sheriff's office to achieve this, and essentially the county system, is a change in how law enforcement deals with behavioral health and mental health. I want to get us out of being the first responder to these types of issues, these type of social issues that whenever feasible, we should be able to put into other people's hands and not have law enforcement be the first response for that. The county has changed to a recent model, is moving to a new initiative called the A3, the anyone, anywhere, and anytime. And it's a behavioral and health model that I think we need to work on. The county sheriff has not been a part of that, but that's something that I want to really engage upon, and that's part of my long-term plan to push and be a flag carrier for getting law enforcement out of these social and behavioral complex issues and have us focus on criminal issues. Jail services as well. Everyone knows the county jail is run by the sheriff. We need to ensure that we have high safety and accountability within those jails. It's not really up to the level that we need. People are still dying in jail at a rate that's too high. I want to provide services to those who are incarcerated at a high level and make sure that we have accountability for those services, that we can actually use them to ensure that we slow down the revolving door of recidivism. That's important to me, and it's important to have that level of accountability not only there in the jail, but at a high level within the office of the sheriff. There's been a few scandals over the years. I think that would require an outside investigation into how things have been conducted within the office. More recently, there was the sales of gun parts that were accumulated through cases at the sheriff's office and then somehow made it back or sold to the streets. You need to have some type of outside apparatus or ability to have someone take a third-party look when it comes to that. And I think that's the high level accountability that people want. I want to bring culture change and modern law enforcement principles, that things that we've learned in Richmond and have made progress to. I want to bring that to the county level and push those beyond. I think it's important that we have community policing as the forefront of our policing model. And that needs to change within the office of the sheriff. It's important to also have quality recruiting and diversity in backgrounds from folks and diversity in thought. I think that's very important to having a sheriff's office that works for everyone in the community and not just some, because that is the perception. And as long as that's the perception, that's a problem. And overall, like I said, I want equity in all of the actions from the sheriff. I want to be an accessible office holder. And that's just currently not the case. I think it's high time that we had quality law enforcement policies in our agency that promoted equity. And it's just something that you don't currently see. And that's the type of sheriff I want to embody. That's who I want to be. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so questions. We've only got time for a couple of questions here. So Sherry, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Susanna. Ben, I'm very concerned about the playground to prison pipeline. And I know Diana kind of touched on that. But I feel very strongly that we need to get these kids on the right path as early as possible. Do you have a plan for doing that, to avoiding the kids going on the wrong path?
I do. I believe that in most circumstances, we should try to avoid youth incarceration whenever possible. It's not, there may be some times where it is unavoidable, but on a larger scale, we need to avoid that and divert that into other means whenever we can. It's important, though, that we have people at that level who actually want to work together with each other. Unfortunately, our sheriff doesn't really want to work with our district attorney or any of the other intragovernmental partners. And that's unfortunate. I think a lot of that has to do with political ideology. And my pledge to you is that I will work with whomever is seated at the table to try to achieve a best goal. And that includes making sure that there's not high youth incarceration.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Did that answer your question, Sherry? Okay, you're
Yes.
still muted.
Yes,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you. Mark, you are up next.
Ben, thank you for making the time today. I'm very interested to hear your perspective on a lot of broader issues connected with the police. I would love to hear your thoughts on ending qualified immunity, the possibility of ending no-knock warrants, also with the recent decades increased sales of military equipment to municipalities, what kind of use of armed reinforcements that police officers use. Also, your thoughts on cash bail and private prisons. I know that's a lot. I'm trying to stuff it all in there, but I just want to understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
It's a lot. Let me sorry, private prisons I don't think are appropriate. I think that's an appropriate means in our state. I don't think that's where our values are at. So I'll work backwards from there. Military surplus equipment. I think a lot of those programs have been curtailed, and there may be some times where it might be appropriate to have some types of equipment. For example, recently in Antioch, there was there was an active shooter who was out in the streets with an AR-15, which is a semi-automatic rifle. That was an incident where having an armored vehicle, helps. Whether that should be ex-military usage of a surplus, that's another story. But there is the important thing is that if you have things like that you have highly restrictive policies in place, that it's not just used, willy-nilly by law enforcement whenever they want, but in certain circumstances. And I think that also needs to be cleared in the public sphere. No-knock warrants, same thing. I think since we've moved away from the drug war era, I think a lot of that has gone away. I think we need to continue to move in that direction. There may be some times, again, where there are certain circumstances that we might need something like that, but on the whole, we really shouldn't be doing that type of work. And I've served, I was on a search warrant team. I served over 200 search warrants, and the percentage of times that we did a no-knock was, very, very, very slim. Only in the highest priority of cases, usually homicides or things like that. But that needs to be, again, that requires, I think, a debate and high quality policies that need to be talked about at the public squares and with community groups. I don't know if I touched, you might have left a couple there on the field. I don't know.
Qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity. The qualified immunity is a more difficult one. I think there's a lot of reasons for why qualified immunity is in place, and it's a little bit too complex for me to get into today. But generally, I support having qualified immunity, but I'm not opposed to some type of reform of it.
We're good? Okay, great. Thank you. We've got time for one more question. Igor, I'm going to you.
Thank you so much, Ben, and good to see you here.
Good to see you too.
So I'm over in Alameda County, as you know, and so I am more familiar with the issues around our jail in Alameda County than I am in Contra Costas, but I imagine that there probably there's a nexus between those issues. Can you talk about one, making sure that folks that are in the county jail are safe from the COVID-19 pandemic, that they are eligible and have the same services that they would have outside of the jail? And secondly, can you speak to when there is a release, making sure that they don't just, particularly women, are not just released in the middle of the night with nowhere to go, with maybe no transit access, which is an issue that you're probably aware was a huge one in Alameda County not too long ago.
Yeah, no, I guess the general thing I would connect with you on, Igor, is that, yeah, safety, and that was definitely an issue. And releasing people in the middle of the night with nowhere to, it's just not really a smart policy. I think it's important to make sure that people, when they get released, it's not in the middle of the night with nowhere to go, no bus pass or something like that. So that would be something I would not be in favor of. Internally within the jails, it's important that there are policies and procedures in place that make sure that people are not harmed. And but I mean, it just happened actually a couple weeks ago when in the jail itself, where some people kind of covertly entered one area where they were not supposed to be, and then killed another person. So that's a problem, and we have to make sure that we have the highest level of facilities and care. Some of these facilities might be old and outdated, and might be time to go away from them, and that that might not be a bad idea, and part of the reasons and rationale for safety. Sometimes things get old and outdated, and then they need to go by the way of the dinosaurs. And it's the same thing with I think you were talking about the COVID policies, and whatever things may be going on out in the world, they need to be reflective upon the jail as well, because it still affects people who are incarcerated. And so I think it's important that if for low-level offenses, things like that, if we have things like the pandemic going on, that they prioritize who is kept incarcerated, who is not. And again, part of the accountability of services that I talk about is ensuring what actually is provided to people. Is it working? If it's not, then move to another service provider, or find out why that service provider isn't providing a high level of service. But in the case for Contra Costa, we actually don't have a lot of service providers providing things in the jails, period. And some of them got kicked out by the current sheriff just because of political disagreements. So all that has to be rectified. And then everything that you've talked about is extremely important.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Thanks for being here. I know we have some more hands raised, but we have a really tight schedule, so we need to move on. But thank you for being here. Again, drop your info in chat if you haven't already.
Thank you.
And everybody keep chat clean. It's fine to post questions, post your thoughts, but keep it professional. Okay, Sherry, back to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have my hand
Oh,
raised.
I'm sorry about Sherry. Carol.
Okay.
I'm losing my mind today. Carol.
Okay, moving along. The next person we have is kind of new to the political scene. She ran for District 18 recently at a special election, and she got really known. She didn't quite have enough votes to make it, but she got really known and has a huge amount of support now. And I'm speaking about Gianni Ramachandra. She's a social justice lawyer, an activist, an artist. She's devoted her life with her job and everything to empowering communities who've been failed by our existing systems. She now is running for city council. I believe it's District 4 in Oakland. And I'll let her tell you what she's up to. Gianni.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be among all of you friends and co-conspirators for justice. So as introduced, my name is Gianni Ramachandra, and I'm running for City Council in District 4 in Oakland. And the reason that I'm running for this seat is because Oakland is in an incredibly pivotal moment of history. While a lot of people characterize this moment as crisis, seemingly dysfunctional government, and so many other issues involving chaos and crisis, I see it as an immense opportunity. Oakland, as we know it, has been run historically by an old boys political network, highly influenced by the power of corporations for generations. Corporations have bought elected officials, have caused the city to have a lot of bad deals that we are still grappling with this day, bad deals that have led to the level of homelessness, poverty, inequity, school closures, as relevant this week, that it is because of the influence of these forces in our city government. This week, I've been a part of movements fighting tooth and nail against the closures of 8 schools and the mergers and consolidations of 8 other schools that have a Black and brown majority of students. And the reason behind this outcome and so many other things going on in Oakland right now is because the power of developers and corporations and charter school money that want the land and money that flow currently to these public schools that are threatened to be closed. And there's so many other issues that Oakland is on the verge of incredible progress and change. For the first time in history, we have a handful of council members, not quite 5, which is the number of votes needed to pass progressive legislation, but we have an increasing number of particularly progressive women who are fighting for change and to make this, to continue the evolution of the city into one that is genuinely equity-minded and focused on the people. For the first time, we are having serious conversations about a progressive business tax, knowing how corporations get away scot-free in this city. For the first time, we are having serious conversations, and actually council's already passed this, it's a matter of implementation and continued support for an alternative 911 program known as MAPRO, which will promote the greater civilianization of traditional police roles. For the first time in history, we are having important conversations of the impact of climate change on our city, the impact that it has for wildfire safety, and the need for comprehensive community-oriented prevention programs, an issue that is of immense interest in District 4. There are many other issues. There's so many other issues that involve, I believe, leaders who are going to continue to move Oakland in this trajectory forward of equity and progress. And what I will bring to the table is, of course, the immense sense of passion I have for this work, the lens of accountability that I want to bring to this work, my lens as still not a politician. Yes, I ran for office last year. Yes, I got 44% of the votes, but that doesn't make me a politician. I will continue to always be a public servant, bringing the lenses of my identity as a daughter of immigrants, as a granddaughter of labor represented folks, as an LGBTQ South Asian, as a former City of Oakland Public Ethics Commissioner, as currently a workers' rights attorney for folks in the City of Oakland, as a former tenants' rights attorney, and as a tenant myself. I'll bring the lenses of my identity as a former community health worker, someone who's worked closely with immigrant survivors of domestic violence in Oakland, and also through my experiences as currently a hotline worker for a non-911 mental health hotline for the city. And as far as the state of the race goes, we are in a really incredible position. It's an open seat, and at this moment, I don't have any opponents yet. And I'm proud to say we definitely scared a couple away. And I know that we have, because of the hard work that so many people in this very Zoom room have put in the past year, we've built name recognition, we've built an appetite, we've harnessed the appetite for change that so many in the city genuinely have. And I know that we can get to the finish line and we can get to victory. And I am asking for your support to help us get there and sustain the momentum for the movement that we have been building. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gianni. So anyone who has a question for Gianni, please raise their hand.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not. Oh, Sherry, go ahead.
Gianni, I was so impressed with your organization for your run for 8018. Are you going to use the same strategy, and are you going to be corporate free in this race also? And can you tell us a little bit about the difference between this race and the race you ran last year?
Absolutely. Firstly and foremost, I will always be a corporate free candidate. And I think the last race was a testament to that success. We had raised over $400,000. We outspent our opponent outspent us 7-1 in the last race, and yet we still got 44% of the vote. And that is primarily attributed to our field strategy. Every dollar invested, every cent of that $400,000 was primarily focused on field strategy, on literature, on a multilingual campaign resources, on the phone banking technology, on everything that we use to make the highest amount of value for our dollars. So right now I am focused on fundraising. Thankfully for this race, I'm only going to have to fundraise about half of what I fundraised last time. It's a smaller district. There are about 50,000 people, about 18 to 20,000 doors. Last time in 4 months, I personally knocked on about close to 10,000 doors. So between now and November, I will have the time to personally knock on all 18,000 doors at least once and have a volunteer do the same. So we are focused on our field strategy, especially because it's a smaller district and people, it's a very active population. People are really engaged in local politics and will want to have conversations. So that door-to-door strategy is going to make a world of a difference for both our broader field campaign and, of course, for me, myself.
Awesome. Thank you, Gianni. Kabir, did you have a question for Gianni?
No, my hand's just up in protest, but I wanted to say Gianni's awesome.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more questions for Gianni? I am seeing no hands, so thank you so much, Gianni, for being here. Oh, wait, Alfred. Alfred has a question for you. Alfred, too. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So for a Hills district, wildfire prevention is going to be one of the most important issues. How do you plan to do that?
Wildfire prevention is at the top of my list because, you know, while it's an issue that a lot of the district, which does constitute the Oakland Hills, cares about, it's going to impact the whole city. I've been having a lot of conversations with the Oakland Fire Safe Council, with folks who have been involved in creating this regional JPA, Joint Powers Agreement strategy, with folks who know the details and nuances of the kinds of invasive species we need to address, of the types of things we need to do for active prevention, because the combination of the East Bay Hills' natural geography plus climate change is really a tinderbox for a natural disaster to happen in the next few years if we don't take active mitigation efforts. And it's not just going to impact houses on the hills, it's going to impact the entire city. While traditionally we think that winds flow from north to south, increasingly we're learning that based on the wind patterns in the city, they are also flowing east to west, which basically means that any fire that happens in the hills will absolutely impact Oakland's flatlands too. So it's an issue that I care deeply about, that I'm learning more about on a daily basis. Every weekend I am sitting either de-weeding or little cleanups or doing something with the local parks associations, because the folks who are putting in the work here right now against wildfire prevention, for wildfire prevention and mitigation, are incredible people that I'm learning a lot from, who care about not only this district, but the entire city, and understand the equity issues involved, and that the hills have some of the resources to take the first steps for the benefit of the entire city.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gianni. Thank you, Alfred. Great question. Joaquin, did you have a question for Gianni? And this will be our last question. So go ahead, Joaquin. Oh, you need to unmute. You're muted.
Sorry. Do you have any sort of a take on the closure of Oakland schools and what could be done to prevent that, or what's going on there?
Almost every day this week, I've been out at an action related to the protesting the closure of Oakland schools. We've been protesting specific school board members who have reneged on their campaign promises. Initially, there are two school board members in particular that ran on campaigns to not close Oakland schools and have done a 180 for various reasons, including the power of who's going to be funding their re-election campaigns. I've done actions at some of Oakland's oldest schools. So I was at Prescott Elementary yesterday, which has been open since the 1860s, standing in solidarity with teachers, parents, children, unions, and so many others who are actively standing up. And and the other night on the school board meeting Zoom call, there were over 2,000 people on the line and at a meeting that ran until well past 2 a.m. in the morning. And I was at a live viewing of that meeting at the local elementary school as well. And, what's different about this is, there are so many actions, especially so many of you in this room have been involved in the fight for CalCare and been pretty disappointed this week. So this news about school closures and actions come in a week where a lot of us are really pissed off. But the difference is, and I know that this is where I know local governments can make a difference, is that While school board members can pretend to make decisions that fly in the face of public opinion, this time is different. In the course of 10 days, the community here has mobilized thousands of people. These are not people who typically show up to protests and actions, but these are people who care about their schools, their families, their children, because of the importance of how people view their neighborhood schools as a home, not just a site for consumption of learning math and science and reading, but a place where people can access food, resources, mental health services. And that is making the difference. Having children testify every single day in one or several of these actions that are making a difference, having teachers go on hunger strike, which we have 2 right now that are still on hunger strike, is making national news. And I don't think this time around that the school board can fly in the face of that level of public opinion and support. So I absolutely stand in solidarity with those protesting these school closures. There are many other ways to address the budget deficit, including not having to pay a consultant proposing these school closures $80,000.
Thank you, Gianni. Inspiring as always. You are amazing. So back to you, Carol.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Gianni. Okay, now let's see. The next person that's going to be speaking, if you attend our meetings regular or anything to do with the Democratic Party in the state of California or in the East Bay, you know this person, Alfred Tu. And Alfred is running for a seat on AC Transit Board of Directors. There's an at-large seat. I believe they have 2 at-large seats, and he's running for an open one. He's an amazing activist, an amazing artist. He very often makes illustrations that everybody has seen and loves, explaining an issue. In fact, he's going to be on at the end of the meeting with a little bit explaining one also. I hope he has some pictures with him. Anyway, he's currently on Berkeley's planning and landmark commissions in the Democratic Party for the state of California. He is an officer in the Asian Pacific Island Caucus. He was a Bernie Sanders delegate in 2020. Much, much more. But I'll leave it to Alfred to let you know who he is.
All right. Thank you, Carol. How much time do I have?
Well, officially 4 to 5 minutes to speak. And then there'll be like a couple minutes for questions. We have to limit questions a little bit.
No worries. I will keep the speeches short so we can take a few more questions. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alfred Tu, and I'm running for the AC Transit Board of Directors at-large seat. And as Carol mentioned, there are so many things I do. And when you think about it, it's kind of like how our transit system brings so many different parts of the East Bay together. The AC Transit District goes all the way up north past Richmond to the West Contra Costa communities, all the way down to Fremont at the southern end of Alameda County. Over 1.5 million people in this transit district. And there are a few reasons I'm running. One of them is to help both our transit system, our riders, our drivers recover from the pandemic. There's been calls for things such as hazard and appreciation pay for the workers. And it's important because these people have been working so hard over the last 2 years, putting themselves at risk so that our essential workers can get to work and keep the rest of society running. And it's also critical because they need to feel appreciated. So people realize that bus driving is a career to go into because one of the biggest challenges to restoring service right now is the shortage of drivers. If you've seen the buses go by, you may notice that many of them have big "we're hiring" ads on the side of them. And at the same time, a lot of our low-income riders have also been hit hard. And many cities now are proposing ideas for having free transit fare that's definitely something I want to work towards, and especially find new ways of funding so that we can shift the cost of supporting our transit service away from just relying on things such as fares and sales taxes as a big chunk of the funding towards more progressive sources of funding, such as property taxes and parcel taxes. One of the opportunities we have coming up is that the East Bay is projected to add a large number of families, over 100,000 families and jobs over the next decade. And if we plan this well, these new people and new businesses, the tax revenue from that can help support a good transit system that runs more frequently, that goes more places, and avoid an issue of excessive traffic in the Bay Area. Other things I want to work on include coordinating the different connections we have with BART, with our neighboring agencies such as the Union City Transit or the Valley Transportation Authority down in Santa Clara, because so many people's commutes cross district boundaries. And there's an effort going on called the Seamless Transit movement to both reduce the cost of transferring between agencies and also to reduce the delays that people face when connecting from one service to another. I'm proud to be endorsed by over 100 people throughout the district, including the mayor of Berkeley, Jesse Arreguin, Alex Lee, state assembly member representing the Fremont area, and many more community members. Would much appreciate to have your organization's endorsement as well. And oh, hi, Devin. I see Devin is here as well. He's another of my endorsees, and I'm also proud to support Devin in his election as well. Anyway, I will take questions, and I will also put my contact information in the chat. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alfred. Always a pleasure to have you at our meetings. Okay, we got a couple hands raised already for questions. Gordon, you're up first.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first one is, have you given consideration to funding pensions in the AC district? I know in county and state government, pensions were underfunded as a matter of political expedience, and now it's become a serious crisis. Are you aware of this? Will you take measures to ensure that workers' pensions are adequately supported?
Yes, so this is one of the largest issues facing every public official in the state. It faces our transit districts, it faces our city councils, it faces so many of our special districts. And I feel that for so long, we've been stuck in this zero-sum mentality where if we want one thing, we got to cut something else. But I don't think that needs to be the way. There's two ways to bring in more revenue. One of them, which we try to avoid, except when it comes to the rich, is increasing taxes. And the other is to increase the tax base. And what that means is that if there are more people living in the Bay Area, that means everyone's individual share of supporting our transit services and other services and our obligations to our retirees, that is spread out over more people and it becomes more manageable. And so I think this idea of having this planned transit-oriented growth for our East Bay over the future will be critical to being able to continue supporting all the public services we have while also meeting our pension obligations. Thank you.
Okay, and the second question is, I've heard the transit situation here described as balkanization. You were mentioning all these different transit agencies. I've got another one here that used to be part of AC. It's called County Connection. And there's Wheels down in Livermore Valley. What is your opinion about this balkanization, and can anything be done about it?
Absolutely. So the first step, of course, is to coordinate the schedules so that you don't show up at one bus stop to get on the next bus and the bus just left 2 minutes ago. And then the next step beyond that is to coordinate fares so that if you pay for a trip on one system, you can transfer to the next system at no additional cost. There's an organization called Seamless Bay Area that has taken a lead on bringing together the 20+ transit agencies. And I will put information in the chat as well about how you can get involved.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon. Sherry, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Alfred, our dearly departed member, Jake, was always concerned about the intersectionality between the various issues that we work on with as progressives. And I know you bring to this, you would bring to this job a lot of experience with housing and how that connects to transit. Could you just, I know it's a big subject, but would you kind of briefly give us an idea of what your ideas are as far as how housing and transit are interconnected?
Sure. So in my day job, I work as an architect. I've worked on many different projects, businesses, housing, including affordable housing. And one thing that often comes up with housing is that one of the biggest costs of a building is the parking garage. And that often limits how much affordable housing we can provide on a location. And so whenever there are opportunities to build homes near the bus system, near the BART system, that way we can lower the cost of housing, provide more homes. And at the same time, it also supports the transit system by providing people riding the bus. And if it's a private development, those property taxes go back into funding the transit system. And more recently, we've seen some cities do what's called transportation demand management, where San Francisco is one example of this, where a private developer, they are allowed to build less parking, but instead they have to provide a bus pass free of charge to everyone living in that building.
Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you, Alfred. Joaquin, you are our last question.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to hand it over to Chris People, see if he had any thoughts about, because I know his long experience in transportation, transit. So I don't know much about it, but Chris, I think would have maybe a question or thoughts.
I don't particularly have a question. I think Alfred and his knowledge of how transportation and land use works together would be very important. But I'm happy to let Alfred say his piece, and I will say mine in 2 years.
Thank you, Chris. Great answer. Okay. All right. That is the end of the questions for Alfred. Thank you, Alfred. A pleasure as always.
Thank you.
We look forward to hearing your thoughts later on in the meeting. Let's see. Up next. Ooh, it stays with me here. So our next candidate is running. There's an open board seat on the Board of Supervisors in Contra Costa County for District 4, and there's quite a few people running, and we are thrilled to have one of the candidates who is running here today, Roxanne Carrillo Garza. Roxanne is a community organizer. She's been fighting for economic justice, education equity, and for neighborhood environments that actually help families. She's very, very big and very knowledgeable in the areas of policy. So without further ado, Roxanne, you are on.
Thank you so much, Susanna. It's really a pleasure to be here and introduce myself as a candidate. Thank you for having me here today. There's been a couple of articles about me. I don't know if anyone has seen them, and they have definitely put me out as the social justice candidate, which I don't shy away from. I think that's a great moniker to have. First, I want to share a little bit about who I am. And as Susanna said, there's 5 folks running for this seat. So I want to let you know a little bit about me. Growing up in the 60s and 70s, the civil rights movement really resonated with me. And even as a young kid, I remember trying to look for opportunities to really talk within my neighborhood and at school about what was happening. And it inspired me to learn at a young age how to speak truth to power, particularly during the times of school busing and UFW strikes. This early experience with the movement also led me to pursue a BA in poli-sci and an MSW with a focus on community planning, organizing, and policy. And I've dedicated my career to, and life really, to policy advocacy and creating effective solutions within government. After advocating with the community to make real change at the local and county level, I'm rising to meet the moment and running to be the next supervisor for District 4. And I feel I'm uniquely qualified to bring change because of my 22 years of professional experience working on county issues and my lived experiences that mirror the residents that we're supposed to serve in this district. Just think about having an innovative voice for the Board of Supervisors. What would that look like? What would that sound like? I say transparency, partnership, and trust. District 4 has changed a lot since the current supervisor was elected for the first time. Now people like myself, people of color, are a larger percentage of the population that can vote. I'll say that there has not been an AAPI or a Latino ever voted for, ever hired for this job. And there have been 3 Latinas before me that have tried to break through, and Contra Costa is very different than the rest of the Bay Area. So I'm hoping to break through that this time. The demographics have changed quite a bit. In Concord, for example, the BIPOC population makes up to close half of the voting age. And how they're voting is changing too. Measure X, a sales tax increase, won in the district. We just saw DA Diana Becton. She received good support in the district, and we will be appealing for the same voters this primary. For most of my career in Contra Costa, I was a county employee. I served as a public health program specialist in Contra Costa Health Services. I worked on environmental justice and cross-divisional approaches to violence prevention. For the last year, as Susanna had said, I've been leading an initiative in Richmond to build resident power and bring together cross-sector collective work on education equity, economic justice, health for all, and support my partners in doing criminal justice reform. I want to talk next about what's impacted the county over the last 2 years. As one of the other candidates mentioned, in 2021, I also served on the county's COVID vaccine ethical and equity vaccine allocations committee. I led efforts to increase access to COVID testing and vaccination services among the most vulnerable populations in our county. I promoted a model of building community coalitions and involving residents from across the county. We must continue to address inequities in healthcare, education, transportation, employment opportunities so all communities thrive. I also support a values-based county budgeting model. So I sit on our Budget Justice Coalition, and our coalition really advocates for more engagement with a diverse range of residents to hear valuable experiences and innovative ideas.
4 minutes.
I think we need a transparent approach to lead to effective decision-making. Measure X has been one of those models. I currently sit on the Measure X cab and was appointed by Supervisor Joya because he trusts my leadership. I also support the county's Miles Hall Crisis Response Initiative for non-police response to mental health crisis. It's a step in the right direction. And then also our field campaign. I have a strong field campaign. I have a strong campaign. Many people have asked about not being the only non-elected official. I have a strong campaign that's organizing a strong ground game. We've already raised $5,000 over the last week. The stakes are high for all of us. What will the future of Contra Costa look like, and how will the supervisor address priorities of a more diverse community? I hope to earn your support for my campaign and include you in my movement to change Contra Costa County. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne. And if you haven't already done, make sure and drop your contact information and where we can donate to you in chat. Does anyone, yes, there are, I think what you said, 5 candidates running for this seat. In my personal viewpoint, Roxanne is the only progressive candidate that is actually running. So I'm glad you could be here with us today. So does anybody have any questions for Roxanne? I am not seeing any questions. Wait, once up, Champagne.
Uh-oh. Thank you, Susanna. And I must say you run a very good meeting, so I appreciate that. Ms. Roxanne, you stated that you have a really good ground game. You did allude to the fact that just last week alone, you guys raised $5,000. A ground game is everything in a campaign. So my question is this: I know that you filed your 410 later than all of your opponents. Filing just came out, and all of your opponents, we know, what their fundraising goals have been, but unfortunately there is nothing for you, which means you are a tad bit behind the curve. So can you elaborate a little bit more on exactly what type of ground game you're going to run? Not saying that it's impossible, because we have seen the impossible happen before, but I'm quite sure this body would like to know exactly, specifically, just how strong your ground game is going to be to overcome those deficits that you currently have.
Right. And I actually think I have a stronger chance at it than the other candidates, because I can build a coalition of progressives, of folks in the district that represent diverse community members. I'm working with a lot of my nonprofit allies to just get networked and learn who the key influencers are. I mentioned before that I have a field campaign that's up and running. We're going to be really looking at a strategic voter contact strategy. We already know which parts of the district voted for Measure X. We know who voted for Diana Becton, and we are going to connect with those voters. Of my field campaign, I have about 5 folks that have been identified, and they already have been doing organizing in this district for more than 5 years, many of them, and we're going to build a coalition, and that's how we're going to do it.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Champagne.
Thank you, Roxanne. Chris, you are up next. You have a question?
Yeah, for those of us who don't live in Contra Costa County, can you tell us where District 4 is and what cities are included and what's the geographic area?
Absolutely. So it's Pleasant Hill, Concord, Clayton, and a little slice of Walnut Creek.
Thank you. Great question.
Pretty white.
Actually, the demographics have been changing over the years. So it's actually been changing over the last 5 years, which I think is why some of the voting around the Measure X and Diana Becton and other issues have won in our district. So I wouldn't sell the Black and brown folks out. And that kind of loops back to Champagne's question, right? Like, if I can really advocate, get folks to be part of this movement that represent those communities, I can win.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Roxanne. Have time for one more question. Gordon, do you have a question?
I'll mute.
You're muted.
Yeah, he's still muted.
You're muted. You're muted.
Gordon, you're still muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
You're good. You're good.
Okay, you're replacing Karen Mitchoff?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. I'm looking
Long
forward
overdue.
I'm looking forward to having you as my County Representative. A problem that occurred with the current Board of Supervisors, except for John Joya, was I think they had an extremely cozy relationship with the sheriff. Are you going to be a little bit more wary of being palsy-walsy, especially if the sheriff does not change in the forthcoming election? Yield.
Thank you, Gordon, for that question. I alluded very briefly in my opening to the fact that I have many partners that have been in alliance with my initiative, which is Healthy Richmond, to do criminal justice reform at the county level. And my partners are the ones who lead that work. But I have been providing support in the background around that criminal justice reform work. I will not accept any funding and I will not have any connection with the Sheriff's Department that would shift away from that criminal justice reform work. The latest thing that you may be referring to is the Measure X dollars. Measure X CAB said that under no circumstances did they want money to go to the Sheriff's Department, that should happen through the general revenue process during budget hearings. And a few of the supervisors did ask the CAO's office to figure out a way to still fund the Sheriff's Department for patrol. I went to the finance committee of the board and asked a lot of questions about that to the two supervisors who chair that finance committee. And I asked them how are we now backing out 6.6 million out of the Measure X allocations? Since that time, I understand that when the board reconvenes on February 22nd, that money is going to be open for discussion and back on the table for community priorities. And Measure X CAB is certainly going to be there and is going to ask those questions again. So I'm hoping that that money will go for community priorities, not the sheriff.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Roxanne, for being here. Let's see. Okay, and next up, again, candidates, I think everybody's been really good about doing this, but candidates and campaign staff, please drop your info in chat, and you can do it a couple times because we have people kind of coming in and out of this meeting. And if you just joined the meeting, you don't see all the previous chat. So anyway, so next up on our agenda, she is my fellow Assembly Delegate District 11's slate mate and delegate to the California Democratic Party. She is the mayor of Suisun City, and she is running for the recently vacated, thank you God, 8011. Yeah, it's pretty public knowledge where I stand on her predecessor. Lori Wilson, take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. Thank you guys for giving up your Sunday night to spend time with the candidates, learn more about our campaigns, and just be, great Dems. And so with that, my name is Lori Wilson. I am the mayor of Suisun City and have had the pleasure of serving my community for the last 12 years, 2 years as a commissioner, 6 years as a vice mayor, and then now the last 4 years, almost 4 years as a mayor. Now, mayor of Suisun City, I've worked hard to keep my community safe. Especially during times of COVID, with COVID testing and finding housing for the homeless. We've had a rough 2 years as a country, as across the globe, as it relates to the pandemic. So much upheaval and trauma, but also in relation to the fires. And so during our fire season, I helped to set up a community center and a sports complex to house those fleeing, particularly from the LNU Lightning Complex. We didn't have them in Suisun City, which we do have an issue with fires. They were in a neighboring city, but we were here to be ground zero to provide support and aid. So much so that I had to work to get 160 cots delivered to our community center to house some very at-risk seniors who needed a place to sleep that evening. And so, as I noted, I was elected in 2012. I was the first Black female elected to our council, the first Black person to be elected as mayor in Suisun City, as well as the first Black female to be elected in all of Solano County as mayor. And so in the assembly, I know I'll be able to hit the ground running. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting from Sac State, actually business administration with a concentration in accounting. I've had the opportunity to lead financial operations for numerous businesses, as well as currently I work for a home builder, but also in fair housing, Napa Valley, for nonprofits. I've been an auditor for Solano County. So I have a diverse background in that, of course, and the work that I do in the my community space. You know, I was one of the founding members of WIP Solano, which is a group dedicated to providing visionary leaders, women leaders in Solano County, as well as Sankofa Democratic Club, which was our first club dedicated wholly to raising up the issues of Black women, including their families, everything. And then as well as working on the formation, along with the people in Contra Costa, helped us form the Commission of Women and Girls, and I was a part of that founding group and now the Friends of. So I've done work in that space, and I'm proud to be supported by numerous people, from our Lieutenant Governor, Speaker of the Assembly, to all of the Congress people that are governing this area, as well as, you know, mayors on both sides of the bridge for AD 11. Now, I started out in 2021 thinking I was only going to have one race in 2022, and that was re-election for mayor in November. Now, of course, with this resignation brings at least 3 elections. So the first one is just under 60 days from now, on Tuesday, April 5th. We have the special for the old seat, which includes portions of 4 cities in Contra Costa and unincorporators and 4 cities in Solano, as well as some areas of Sacramento County. Then 63 days later, we'll have a new election, the general primary for the new seat, which is the whole of Solano County, plus the city of Oakland and the unincorporated areas of Discovery Bay and Byron. And then we'll move into the general, you know, election in November. So we have 3 races this year, lots of ground to cover. And right now I don't have an opponent, but that doesn't matter. We still have to outreach to voters, engage, help them know more about me, as well as me understand all the nooks and crannies of this AD 11. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. So questions. Mark, I see you have your hand up.
So Lori, you are still the only candidate who has filed for AD 11. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wow, that's way cool.
Yeah, I'm going to cross my fingers, knock on some wood. Yes, right now I'm the only candidate filed. There is someone who is who's said they're going to do a write-in candidacy, who is a Republican, and then I do have a Republican who is making it a little bit known that he'll be running in the June election.
Very good. Oh, so my actual question is, do you support or oppose the dredging of the Delta? And do you support or oppose fracking and Sassoon Bay in the Sassoon Bay Marsh?
So I'll start with the fracking, because I oppose fracking and was part of I served as the chair of the mayors over the year 2021. And then we submitted a letter in regard to that of saying that we were opposed to it. Speaking on behalf of us is only the mayors, because we had not there wasn't time, you know, to bring it to each city for the cities to adopt it. But as the mayors, we spoke up in our own names and did oppose that. In terms of dredging, I do support dredging for us. That is part of our access, you know, to the bay and Sassoon City. So I do support dredging. We have dredged as a city every approximately 10 years. And so I do support dredging, but I do recognize the environmental concerns around that, and that it has to be done with caution, and only if it's necessary, and on making sure we mitigate all environmental concerns surrounding dredging. But I have supported in the past and currently support that for my city.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have 2 more hands raised. So we'll take these 2 questions and then we will cut that off and go to our next candidate. Alfred, you are up next.
Thank you. So recently there were 2 progressive bills that came up short in the assembly. One of them for single payer healthcare and one to protect tenants from speculator evictions. So I'd like to know what your approach on healthcare and housing would be.
So I'm going to take the AB 1400, which is the one I believe you're talking about, that one first. And so AB 1400 as a concept, or let me say this, universal care as a concept, single payer as a concept I've supported in the past, especially in terms of at the federal level. For the state, that's only been a recent issue on my radar in the last couple of years as I've been watching this particular bill, and do support it in concept. My concern with that particular bill was definitely related to financing and how you finance it. It comes from my background. That was my first thought. And I had lots of great conversations with Contra Costa Labor Council and particularly the CNAs in regard to this issue. And they actually, right before the vote, helped me reframe it in terms of as a first start, because I support it. And so it was like, what's the first step to get to single payer in California? And then once reframing it to that, it put me more in the support column for that. But I'm looking forward to being able to have my voice on this particular issue, because I do think we have to find a way to fund it. And I see that the different mechanism, especially that related to going to Congress to request payment for Medicare and Medicaid payments. My issue with that is they're not supporting single payer right now. Are they going to support this effort to move those funds? And then also we've made significant investment in like CalAIM and other areas related to healthcare in California and what happens to those. And there wasn't that language put in there that talks about that transition and what happens to those investments that we've already made. And so I would love to see some of that included and look forward to lending my voice on the subject, because it is something that I support. And it's just a matter of how, right? How do we get it done? And so that's where I'm looking to lend my voice to. And the second one, I'm not as familiar with the area that in the housing protections, and I wasn't familiar with that particular bill. So I'm just going to speak to it as an overall concept. Housing is very important to me. I sit on the ABAG's. Actually, I'm chair of the housing committee in ABAG, and it's something that we've really focused on, especially as co-chairing with BAFA, to find a funding mechanism for the housing measures we want to put forth. You know, I follow the 3 Ps, which is production, protection, and preservation. And I firmly believe that housing as a basic need, we have to, as a government, we have to provide, we have to facilitate people being housed. And that's where I stand on those issues where some of my values align with. And so whichever bill or whatever policy or legislation that comes forward, that's the lens and perspective that I'll be viewing that through.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Alfred, for that question. Thank you, Lori. Igor, you are up next, and you are our last question.
Thank you so much, Mayor. It's great to see you. Tagging on to the last question, the other priority bill for many of us was AB 854, which would have reformed the Ellis Act in a way that it would still continue to help mom and pop landlords, but get speculators out of the habit of kicking tenants out of the places that they call home. So it would have helped hundreds of thousands, if not more, tenants across California. So I will ask again, based on what you've heard, would you support something like AB 854? That's my first question. My next question is, I actually had the opportunity to be in your neck of the woods late last year for a groundbreaking ribbon cutting celebration for 94 affordable housing units powered by solar through the Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing, or SOMA program. You may have heard that there is a CPUC proposal, and there have also been legislative proposals that, if they go through, will, one, impose a solar tax on middle class and working class folks of $57 a month, and two, hamper the opportunity for those renters, including renters in affordable housing, from being able to benefit from solar, like the one that I had the pleasure to visit in Suisun City. How would you respond to that issue in the legislature? And would you be willing to send a letter to the governor protesting this proposed decision?
Thank you for those questions. So to the first one, like I said when I was responding to Alfred, is that I view these bills and all this legislation through that particular lens. And so I had Assemblymember Bonta, who's an endorser of mine. She called me the next day on Tuesday about this particular bill. So my first real exposure to it was her walking me through what it meant and her disappointment in it being pulled and not, going forward. And so we talked a bit about it, and she spent the time to educate me on it. And so it is something generally I support, because I do support reforms to the Ellis Act. And so through that brief conversation, I said, yeah, I know it sounds like something I would support, but definitely need to understand more. And so we agreed that basically when I came on board, if I was so lucky for the voters to put me there, that there were some key points that I needed to, key bills that she wanted to include me in, and there were a group within the, in particular, the Black Caucus, who were wanted to make sure to educate me on and to make sure I fully understand so that I could lend my voice or vote to those in the future. And so that is something that I generally, getting a very high level, only over the phone, a conversation agree to. But yeah, so that is something that I would lean into. As regard to solar and this issue, it actually came up on another call I was in, where I heard them ask that question of another candidate. And I was like, I remember writing down, like, what is that? I don't know what that, I wasn't following that. And of course, had the opportunity since then to do my research on that. And I don't support the additional tax related to solar. I think, that we have pushed to make solar accessible, and it shouldn't be just accessible to the few. It should be accessible to everyone. And there's an equity issue when you do that type of thing. And so it's something that I do not support, and would be happy to lend my voice on that subject.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Thank you for being here and sharing all that info with us. And yeah, this special election thing is kind of crazy, right? This redistricting. I'm like, what district do I even live in anymore?
I'm just happy I kept AD 11. The number was the same.
Exactly. I'm moving to another one, sadly. But at least I get to vote for you. So in this one. Okay, cool. So let's see. I think we've got one more candidate. Back to you, Carol.
Okay, we actually have two more. I missed putting one on the list that I made. And one of them actually, Aisha Wahib, is not here. So that will put us to the one I apologize for not having added to the list when I put the list up earlier. So we have Elise Castro here tonight. And we first met her a couple months back. She dropped in a meeting at the invitation of Mike Hutchinson when we were having people that we had endorsed come and talk about what they were involved in right now. And she came, and we decided we want to invite her back. Anyway, she is running for Alameda County Superintendent of Schools. And she really works on things in making it equitable for the students. She's committed to the students, alternative education, to stop the school to pipeline, through school to prison pipeline. She's really strong on students. Like, there isn't probably a better person around working for the students. Anyway, Elisa.
Thank you so much. Hey, everybody, my name is Elise Castro. I am a lifelong educator, actually a second generation educator who started my teaching career on a teaching team with my mother. I have been a teacher, I have been a principal, and currently I support a large cohort of schools that are designed to completely support and change lives for young people who were not successful the first time around, or who were underserved in their first set of schools. So dropout recovery programs, continuation high schools, independent study, and the schools inside of juvenile hall, at our boys ranches, and our programs for expelled, foster, pregnant parenting, and other multi-system youth. So I'm running for Alameda County Superintendent of Schools because the county superintendency is this incredibly obscure but incredibly powerful lever to actually make efficient and effective public schools that work for the kids furthest from opportunity. In a lot of ways, you can think of the county as operating as a safety net, and it operates as a safety net both for individual students and for the districts within a county. So one of the county's responsibilities is to directly operate the schools for foster, homeless, and detained young people. And we can do do that by simply centering the experiences of those young people, the voices of those young people, and making schools that actually are completely designed to change their life experiences and outcomes. We have enormous success in doing this. I've been doing it for 20 years, and we can do it in Alameda County, where we actually have a really strong bench of partners, apprenticeships, social emotional learning, all of the things that these young people need to turn their lives around. At the same time, the county acts as a safety net for the districts. So the county, as many of you, especially if you've been following the Oakland school closures issues, have learned perhaps quite recently, the county approves the budgets and the accountability plans of all of the districts within the county. In Alameda County, that is 18 school districts. And the role of the county there can be either just pure compliance, which is sadly what we're doing right now, or it can be truly an alongside partnership, helping the districts reach their values and helping the districts to actually close their achievement gaps and not have to close schools, maximize their resources. And then the county also can act as a partner to help really build out partnerships countywide to ensure that every one of our kids has a social worker access on campus, has mental health and physical health resources, what some people call a community schools model. County also serves an important role in recruiting and retaining teachers, which we know at this point is a critical shortage that we're having, perhaps because we don't pay or value or support them through this incredibly challenging time. Then the last thing that really you should be asking from your county is to prioritize safety through support. Really strong COVID support, keeping policing out of our schools, having restorative justice be the basis of how we work with our young people. So that's basically what I do. I should mention that in addition to years as a principal, I have also taught at UC Berkeley's Graduate School of Education. I've taught school resource and finance. I am what's called a budget nerd. I'm who they send the new educators to learn about how to make the most out of their resources. I have been endorsed by the California Teachers Association, by the teachers of the state of California. And I have a deep background. I'm perhaps one of the only people you will ever hear say, I love teenagers. And I have a deep background working in mental health supports. I'm the president of Alameda Family Services, which operates the Head Start and the free and low cost mental health services, as well as school-based health centers here in the city of Alameda. We also operate the new CARES program, which is Alameda's mental health first responder program. And so we are successfully diverting 5150s from the police pipeline, and we can do it countywide. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Elise. Okay, so anybody who has a question, please raise your hand. We've got time for a couple of questions, and then we need to move on to some updates that we have. Sherry, go ahead.
Well, thanks so much for being with us, Elise. And as a fellow Alameda resident, the big question is there's quite a diversity of schools and also the needs of the kids in this district. And of course, charter schools is the big issue right now. Can you kind of explain how the superintendent balances the needs of the various United School districts?
So this is, again, I'm going to return to the image of a safety net, that it is definitely some districts need more support than others. And some of our smaller districts have not been able to negotiate contracts with mental health providers to be on all of their campuses, whereas some of the larger ones have. And that is a role for the county to step in and make sure that there is equitable access to that for all of the kids. You also asked about charters, which is, an infinite subject of conversation, but I will just do the short piece, is that the county board, which is elected separately from the county superintendent and has a separate set of responsibilities, the county board is responsible for approving charters, especially if a district has rejected that charter. They serve as the board of appeal. So as the county superintendent, I don't have a direct role in whether or not a charter moves forward. However, the county superintendent staffs those staffs those meetings and staffs that board. And so when the county superintendent brings forward a package of data that includes things like the demographics of the charter school compared to the demographics of the neighborhood, the number of special needs students being served at the charter school compared to the number of special needs students being in the neighborhood, it creates a real opportunity for the board to make a decision based on the values of that superintendent brings forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Elise. Mark, you are up next.
Elise, our friend Mike Hutchinson has given you his highest recommendation. So I wanted to get your perspective. Of course, we are deep in the current crisis for the Oakland schools. I was wondering, what do you foresee is the next crisis our schools in Oakland are going to face?
Honestly, I think the next crisis our schools in Oakland are going to face is this crisis over again with another wave of closures, because we are trapped in a death spiral right now of underfunding the schools. So the kids disappear from the schools, which is beyond the scope of the schools because it also has so many gentrification effects, and there really are fewer kids in the neighborhood than there used to be. But that spiral of declining enrollment and having some schools that are stronger than other schools, which compels families to move toward the schools that they perceive as stronger and out of their neighborhood schools, continues to hollow them out until they get further closure and then further charterization and privatization. So I feel like the same crisis is going to keep happening. And that is part of why we need to address it at so many levels. And I'm really grateful to, I think Rebecca Kaplan is still on this call, she and the 4 city council members who have put together a proposal to basically take some action at the state level. Assemblymember Mia Bonta is also working on some legislation that will address things at the state level. At the local level, having a county superintendent who is not interested in turning up the heat on Oakland, but in fact getting them out of debt so that they can have more local control. But ultimately, we have to solve this issue of privatization of our schools. And we created this. When I say we, I mean the policymakers created the incentives to drive small schools to want to be charters. We can create the incentives to drive those schools and those educators and those kids right back into the district.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Elise, for being here. I know anything school related, you're on the hot seat right now. It's kind of crazy.
Keep your questions coming in the chat.
I think that is the end of our candidates. So Carol, I am kicking us back to you. So I know we've got some speakers coming in.
Okay, yeah. Wow, these candidates are, every one of them is so amazing. Anyway, I thank all of them for coming and all the questions. And I know everybody didn't get to ask questions. Impressive anyhow. So
Carol, turn on your picture, Carol. Let's see you.
Where am I? I'll get it on in a minute. I need to finish speaking here. Okay, so we've got 3 speakers. We have Igor, who's going to update us on solar. We have Alfred, who's going to talk about the process of getting an endorsement from the California Democratic Party. And then we have Mark, who's going to give an update about what happened in CalCare. I think everybody knows that it went down the tubes for now. And we had a 3-hour call with the person who wrote it, Ash Kalra. And so Mark's going to talk. And I see there's a couple other healthcare people here that might want to say something also. And then we have Mike Ollis from Our Revolution National here. And if Mike would like to say a couple words, we'd love to have him also. So in that order, go for it, you guys.
Thank you so much. I think I might be next in that order. And we are definitely in a fight of our lives right now to safe solar to make sure that it is affordable and accessible to all. PG&E, Sempra, and other investor-owned utilities have proposed a solar tax of an average of $57 a month. And as I've mentioned before, they are basically claiming that solar is something that is a tool of the wealthy and the poor has to pay for it. Well, if the utilities have their way, it's just going to be additional padding for their executive compensation of their CEOs and other executives at the very top. But what is going to happen to middle class and working class folks is it's going to be so unaffordable that it just wouldn't make any economic sense for them to purchase it. In fact, research from LBNL has shown that there are more adopters of rooftop solar making $50,000 or less, which is considered very low or extremely low income, than there are households making $250,000 or more. In addition to that, 66% of those adopting solar have a household income of $150,000 or less. So these are the working class and middle class folks that we are trying to fight for. So I posted a couple of links on the chat, and we are continuing to call the governor. That is the #1 action. There is a script that I'm going to drop in the chat in a second. Please pretend that you are Our Revolution Chicago, not Our Revolution East Bay. And what I mean by that is make the call to the governor early and often. Make it every day. There have been a few days when we've been able to shut down his phone lines because 86% of Californians agree that we should be making solar affordable and accessible to more people, not fewer, or not just destroying it entirely so that PG&E has their way. Because of the community pressure, there was a meeting of the California Public Utilities Commission 2 weeks ago where we basically shut down that meeting for 8 hours. There were 450 people that made public comment, 8 hours of public comment. And this is why we received notice a few days ago that they are going to delay making a decision on this issue. But this by no means this by no means should be construed to mean that we have won. It just means that we are beginning to finally get heard, that the governor has underestimated the power of the people on this issue. And now we need to double down on that. So as Bernie says, not me, us, let's all make that call to the governor tomorrow, 9 a.m., as soon as the phone lines open. Happy to answer any questions.
Carol, do you see any questions for Igor, or should I start?
I don't see any. Okay, last chance.
Thank you, Igor. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Okay, Alfred.
All right. So I'm going to put on my California Democrats hat now. And so as you all know, there's the June primary coming up. It's called a June primary, but really it's May because that's when people will get their ballots. We are now an all vote by mail state. And so what the party is doing is the party will be endorsing in all the state assembly, state senate, congressional, governor, insurance commissioner, lieutenant governor, controller, all those state elections. And we were going to have a convention in LA in beginning of March, but that's all going to be online. But before that, what's also happening is what's called the pre-endorsement process, where Democrats in each district get together. Well, again, it's online, but vote on who they think the party should endorse. And Carol, can you let me share my screen here?
Okay, I don't know how to do that. Does somebody else know how to let him share your
Or you
screen?
can just make me co-host. That would do it.
Can somebody make him co-host? Michael, Susanna, Mark?
There we go.
Okay.
You should be able to share now.
All right.
Okay.
Yep, there you go.
So right now this is a very complex flow chart, but the big picture is there are 3 stages people have to pass through to get the party. The pre-endorsement of the people in their area, the California Democratic Party delegates at convention, and finally, the approval of all the 3,500 delegates statewide. So right now we are up here for those people who were elected as delegates and are in a district where there's a competitive election. They will be voting this week on who they think the party should endorse. If more than 70% of them agree, then it will go on what's called the consent calendar for automatic endorsement. If less than 50% support any candidate, then the party will stay out of that election and say no recommendation. If it's between 50 and 70%, it goes to convention. The other way something can go to convention is if 20% of all the party delegates in the district or 20% statewide object to that recommendation. And that is happening to some of the incumbents who oppose things like single payer healthcare. The Progressive Caucus is flexing its muscle to hold out automatic endorsement. And at convention, there will be another vote. And over there, somebody will need 60% to go on the calendar for endorsement. And there's also a way for 300 delegates to object if the vote was close, in which case it goes to a floor vote of all the party delegates. Again, this is all going to be online this year. And that all wraps up on Sunday, March 6th. So at that point, it will be known who the California Democrats is supporting in the primary. And this is probably most influential in those open seats, such as Assembly District 20, where Jennifer Steen is running, or Senate District 10, where Aisha Wahab is running. That's where the party endorsement really makes a difference. So thank you all for your work in getting progressive delegates elected to the party in the last couple of years. And I'll put the info for all this in the chat as well.
I think Igor has his hand up for a question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alfred. This is more of a additional update. You may have seen my post in the chat that the draft platform of the California Democratic Party is out. This is a biennial process, once every 2 years. And this is another thing that we can use as a tool to hold elected officials and candidates accountable. For instance, Medicare for All, Healthcare for All has been in the platform since 2006, I believe. And this is why we can use this as a tool to say, if you didn't vote or were not planning to vote for AB 1400, then you shall be challenged in your endorsement. Now, we heard rumors and insinuations that there was going to be an attempt to weaken the platform and actually take some things out from last year, which we fought to put in the platform. And thankfully, due to the outcry that's prompted, at least the environmental plank of the platform looks good to me. But please review all of the planks. If you have suggested changes or you don't see something that should be in there, there are 2 weeks to provide testimony by going to kadem.org/platform. Also, the party finance question. I remember you all were so helpful in getting the party to try to vote on whether to stop accepting money from fossil fuel and law enforcement entities. The recommendation of the committee, a 9-person committee making recommendations on that, will be going out sometime next week. So please stay tuned and be ready to fight if there is something that stops short of what we expect of the party and of the candidates to earn our endorsement. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to add to that point that Igor just made about what kind of money is the party going to be taking, the executive board, which both of us are on, will be meeting in 2 Sundays to vote on that. So we will need your help in convincing some of the other board members, possibly on certain issues. So we'll let you know.
Thank you, Alfred and Igor. And Alfred, thank you for that graphic that demystifies the very mystifying process for endorsement of incumbents and potential Democrats. So thank you for that. The party does make it easy for everybody, doesn't it? So I have the very unhappy task of letting you know what has happened with AB 1400. And I'm not going to pull any punches for this little 5-minute spiel I'm going to give, because I think it's very important for us to know where we are as a movement. I know all of you know AB 1400 is CalCare, was the single-payer universal healthcare bill that passed all its necessary committees in the California Assembly. It even had the surprise support from the Speaker of the Assembly, Anthony Rendon. And yet last week, it went down in flames. It was pulled. It was killed. What happened? What happened? Well, healthcare justice activists, California nurses, and millions of Californians suffering under this immoral healthcare system, we were betrayed. We were betrayed. CalCare was killed in the very last hour by its lead author, Assemblymember Ash Kalra, who was with us in our last healthcare justice town hall. And I'll give you the reasons that he gave. Ash said the bill didn't have the votes. Ash said that there were assembly members who Ash thought might be persuadable with more time. Ash also says that there might be more progressives in assembly after the upcoming election, all of which I hope is true. For the past week, Ash has been doing damage control on local media. You will hear him make these and other incoherent excuses. So what really happened? What really happened is that the California Democratic Assembly does not want the people of California to have single-payer universal health care. But they don't want their constituents to fully know that. Why? 2022 is an election year. Politicians are by nature duplicitous, cowardly, creatures of expediency. Only under conditions of the utmost scrutiny or pressure will politicians do the right thing. And Democrats in the legislature, they do not want to go up against big insurance and big pharma. They don't want to go up against all that money in the next election. Voting yes or no becomes an electoral catch-22 that they don't want to deal with on AB 1400. If they vote yes, that means they'll be targeted by big money interests like big pharma and big insurance. If they vote no, they'll be targeted by the activists and the progressive caucus. So Ash Kalra gave them the cover that they wanted. No bill, no vote. Everybody is safe. Assembly Democrats can keep taking big insurance money if they want to, and they can keep telling their constituents how much they believe that healthcare is a human right. Leading up to Ash pulling the bill, the weekend before the vote, Governor Gavin Newsom, with all the confidence of him winning his recall election, he signaled to the Democrat caucus that the bill was a no-go. He was saying, you know, this bill came out of nowhere, even though it was a 2-year bill. And even though it's also the only bill in the state legislature that has actual grassroots mobilization around it, natural grassroots mobilization around it. So that was the first warning sign. And then the California Democratic Party Progressive Caucus publicly signaled they would be pulling endorsements of incumbents that voted against CalCare. Yes, single-payer healthcare is in the party platform, but that doesn't matter. So anyway, there was a great deal of fervor and fear and anxiety amongst Assembly Democrats leading up to this bill. And it's unfortunate that this betrayal happened because the movement needs to know who is with us and who is against us. And also the fact that Assemblymember Kalra unilaterally made this decision, which in itself is a contradiction of the ethos of not me, us. But from what I understand, and I've talked to a lot of people, he did not confer with the California nurses, who are the leading sponsor of CalCare, and Osh didn't confer with the bill's co-authors, according to them. And as to some of the reasons Ash has made, yeah, lots of assembly bills don't have the votes, and they get voted on. And the idea that maybe another year persuasion will bring over assembly members to CalCare, that sounds great, but Ash won't say who these persuadables are. And at this point, it seems that everything that's being done in the aftermath of CalCare is about protecting those who are against universal health care from letting that knowledge be known to their constituents. So needless to say, democracy is not backroom deals. Democracy is not protecting your colleagues above the needs of the people. Democracy is not unilaterally killing a bill to make re-elections easier. Democracy is voting. Democracy is representing the people. Democracy is addressing the needs of the people. So where does that leave us? Well, this is my opinion, and I'm willing to hear other people's opinions. But I'm afraid the only conclusion I could come to is ballot initiative. Ballot initiative. I mean, CalCare, the funding for CalCare, AC 11, would have to go on the ballot anyway. And the idea that if we just wait another year, I mean, we were betrayed tonight and we'll be betrayed again. So with a ballot initiative, I know it's expensive. I know it's a big fight. I know it's risky, but we can't wait. We can't wait another year for another betrayal. We can't wait another year for another stooge to take the fall. California can't wait. The millions of Californians suffering under this healthcare system can't wait. So I want to ask all of you to join me and help strategizing about how we work the ballot initiative, getting the signatures, getting the funding, getting as much of labor on board as we can. And I welcome having this fight out in the open. And that's what's going to be with the ballot initiative. We're going to have all the big pharma, all of the insurance companies come out against us, and we'll see who our allies are. Ballot initiative. So that is my very sad, very unhappy report to give to everybody. If anyone has any questions, hit me up now. I see a question from Gordon. Gordon, go ahead.
Yeah, this raises the question of whether the Democratic Party is worth a shit. It raises the question about maybe this should be the time when the third party movement crystallizes. It also raises the question, everybody says climate change is more important, healthcare is more important. Getting big money out of politics always goes to the back of the bus.
Yes. Every
Every time. And we keep having this happen and we don't learn. So those are two comments. Any comments?
Getting big money out of politics, of course, is essential. All things follow. Democracy follows from getting big money out of politics. Any other questions or comments or disagreements?
I have kind of a comment. We have Dan Hodges here, if he's still here, who has been working on healthcare in California for 100 years. You still here, Dan? And would you like to say anything?
No, I thank you, Carol. I appreciate that. I have nothing to add. I did post the link to my updated history of California single payer legislation and movement, 1997 to 2022, which takes us through February 4th of this week. And there are a lot of links that I think are worth checking out, links pertaining to the events of this week, both in the media and so on. But I have nothing to add to what Mark has said. One thing I should mention of the links, there's a very interesting column in the San Francisco Chronicle from a few days ago about what needs to happen for single payer to go forward. And there's a very interesting interview on KALW with Wendell Potter defending Ash Kalra, who is on that radio show initially, versus the chair of the Progressive Caucus of the California Democratic Party. And it's not a vitriolic debate, but it's very clear that these two gentlemen have exceedingly contrasting views on how to interpret what Ash Kalra did in pulling the bill. One last thing, which is my own editorializing here, because I'm saying this to Healthcare for All California. We need to have a much better relationship with the nurses. The nurses need to have a much better relationship with the movement, people outside the nurses. And people like Ash Kalra need to have a much better relationship with the movement themselves. Kalra did not have what you might call a kitchen cabinet where he would consult with people. Think about this, for example. He basically shivved one group, the nurses. Why? Because at best, that was the only group with whom he was working. And that boiled down probably to just one person, their government relations specialist, Stephanie Roberson.
Yes.
Assume there were other unions and other important organizations who were working with Kalra, who were working with the nurses in Kalra. Then he would have had to shiv what amounted to representatives of a coalition, which would have been far more difficult to do. Kalra admits that he made a grave error in going it alone without consulting with his only organizational ally, the nurses. But that's not enough to be remorseful that you only didn't talk to one group. We need to have a legislative system for the single payer movement in which those who are working to develop legislation are not by themselves like the nurses, and those who are carrying legislation are not by themselves like Ash Kalra. There really has to be a fundamental reorienting to how this movement is going to go forward with our allies like the nurses and our authors like Kalra. That's what to me this week demonstrated the poverty of the relationships between the sponsoring organization, the nurses on the one hand, the author on the other hand, and the rest of us who are carrying water for this.
Daniel, thank you for that. And Daniel, I do consider you the foremost chronicler of single payer in California. I must ask you before you go. Number one, was that a fair characterization of Ash's reasons for pulling the bill that I gave? Did I miss any that were important? And also, I've never asked you, but what are your thoughts about putting single payer as a ballot initiative?
I am not in favor of ballot initiative. I've never been in favor of ballot initiative. I've always kept that from you, but you put me on the spot. Okay, my friendship with you continues. And Richard, in your question in the chat, all of the things that I'm referencing are in the links in my document. And I could always put another link to the document if people have a hard time going back in the chat to find it.
Yeah, please do that. Dan,
I will.
put another one.
All the links are there to the things I'm talking about, the interviews, the radio shows, the San Francisco Chronicle columns. But I've been a strong believer in having legislative campaigns as opposed to a ballot initiative. But again, I am tub thumping today with you all. This way that we are conducting the movement, the relationships with sponsored organizations like the nurses, the relationship with authors like Kalra has to absolutely, to the finest T, change. It's got to get better. This was a bad week in exposing the poverty of the relationships between the nurses and us, the author and us, and we ourselves have to be more influential going forward.
So Daniel, with all sincerity, I always felt the nurses were keeping cholera sort of at arm's length away from the activists for a very long period of time. And it was only when I recognized his willingness to talk with members of the activist movement and that I tried to bring them all in, bring all the major players in as best I could in recent weeks, really sort of at the last minute. But I take to heart what you say, and I think you're absolutely right.
I mean, the nurses, what did the nurses ultimately get? They got angry, as they should have, but they sort of got, the chickens came home to roost. they isolated themselves from us. And then Kara, shivved them.
Anyone else would like to make a comment or a disagreement or thoughts?
Well, there's a question I see somebody has submitted that says, why is Mr. Hodges against ballot initiative? I don't know if you want to answer that because it's lengthy.
I want you to answer that. I'm asking that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not sure your meeting is geared to a
All right.
discussion about ballot initiatives.
Gotcha.
My understanding is your meeting is geared to endorsements of candidates and other important business that you've got. This to me is frankly, to be frank, a hijacking of the agenda to go and talk about the pros and cons of the ballot initiative. And I wouldn't want to engage in that. I wouldn't want to do that to you all.
Maybe we can have you come another time. Have a big
Perfect topic for
discussion
another
about-
meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, is that it, Mark?
that's it for me. Thank you.
Sudhir has her hand waved for a long time.
Sudhir, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Sudhir, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Okay, I was just gonna say, why don't we ask Bernie his opinion? I mean, he's the first one to demand Medicare for all. He'd probably like to see California win. And he probably has experience both with ballot initiatives and councils. And I don't know, why don't we ask him what he thinks?
I put my history back in the chat.
Thanks, Dan. Oh, okay, so
is the superintendent person still here too? But I guess we don't want to go backwards, but I had a question for her, maybe later.
why don't you just write to her?
Okay.
Okay, so,
Back
you
to
know,
you,
we're
Carol.
already 21 minutes past time. And we have two more things possibly. The last thing we always do is Sudia.
Okay, got it.
A song, a protest song or a labor song. And before that, we have a special guest that dropped in tonight from OR National. Mike, would you like to say anything? No pressure. If you're not into it, we'll talk to you another time. But we'd love
Hey,
to
everybody. Just want to say hello and just want to hear some of the endorsement conversations. And, you know, 2022 is going to be a very important year across the country and especially in California, and excited about all the work everybody's doing. And yeah, just that, hey, we want to help the endorsement process. We're talking to candidates. We had our first big endorsement win a couple of weeks ago in Austin, Texas, where we helped elect a city council member to Austin. And the first national primary is 3-1, where we hope to elect 3 new progressives to Congress. And then just lastly, you know, next week is the 215 San Francisco School Board recall vote, and we are working with the Bernie-crats to try and to defeat all the recalls. So we're pretty busy and excited about the work coming up, and can't wait to work with everybody going forward.
Yeah, that's going to be a heavy thing in San Francisco.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so
I think we're
if
asking
anybody has
160 to
any
1,
time
so
that
it's
they
a
could
little
go over
gnarly out
there
there.
and do anything or make phone calls, contact the SF Bernie Crats and they'll tell you what to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, this meeting, of course, went too long. Anyway, so what we're gonna do now, we're gonna have one song from Sudia and Craig. And happy
Carol.
birthday, Craig.
Carol, just before we have the song, can I ask if this has been announced already? Are you all, have you considered supporting Jennifer Esteen in 80-20? Have you already done that?
She was here tonight. There'll be a members vote.
Okay. Do I get, is it appropriate to mention that she's having like a Zoom house party tomorrow?
Don't mention it.
Yeah,
mention it yet.
Put the info in chat.
Okay.
Dan, put the info Yeah.
Yeah, if
Fine.
I can somehow get it, I will. I'll try.
Okay. Ready?
Oh, okay. Go for
Okay.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I have one in English and one in Spanish, so.
No, I have one thing to say. Once the
Say first?
song is over,
Okay.
say, that's good night. Thank you. I'll say this now to everybody for being here. If you're not a member yet, join so you can vote. I know most of you who are kind of new here, maybe you're not eligible to vote. I don't know. You have to have done something with us in the past year, plus pay your dues. Anyway, and then afterwards, we're going to have a short board meeting for board members only. So as soon as Sudia completes, everybody else, good night. Love you all. Go for
Okay.
it.
I had a funny experience the other day. I was walking into the flea market or the farmer's market in Oakland. Woman comes up to me, says, "Oh, you're the singing lady." It was Paula Laverde.
Yay! She's here tonight.
Yeah.
So I ended up driving her to the barn and talking with all the people she was with, Salvadorian women, and we knew everybody in Salvador together, which was great. Okay, so because of what's going on and all the multitude of anti-war protests around the country, yesterday mostly sponsored by Code Pink. I probably have sung this one before, but it's just so relevant. It's a Phil Oakes song called "I Know You're Set for Fighting, but What Are You Fighting For?" Well, you tell me that there's trouble in this land you tell me that there's danger in this land you call your own, and you watch them build the war machine right beside your home, and you tell me that you're ready to go march into the war. I know you're set for fighting, but what are you fighting for? Well, before you pack your rifle and sail across the sea, just think about the southern part of this land that we call free. Well, there's many kinds of slavery, and we've seen many more. Well, I know you're set for fighting, but what are you fighting for? And before you walk out on your job and answer to the call, just think about the millions who have no job at all, and those who wait for handouts with their eyes upon the floor. Well, I know you're set for fighting, but what are you fighting for? Well, turn on your TV, turn it on so loud, and watch the fool is smiling there, and tell me that you're proud. And listen to your radio, the noise it starts to pour. Well, I know you're set for fighting, but what are you fighting for? Well, read your morning papers, read every single line, and tell me if you can believe that simple world you find. Read every slanted word till your eyes are getting sore. I know you're set for fighting, but what are you fighting for? And listen to your leaders, the ones who won the race, as they stand there right before you and lie into your face. And if you ever try to buy them, you know what they stand for. I know you're set for fighting, but what are you fighting for? Well, put ragged clothes upon your back and sleep out on the ground, and tell the police about your rights as they drag you down, and ask them as they lead you to some deserted door. Well, I know you're set for fighting, but what are you fighting for? And it's the best verse. But the hardest thing I'll ask you, if you will only try, is take your children by the hand and look into their eyes, and there you'll see the answer you should have seen before. If we win the wars at home, there'll be no fighting anymore. If we win the wars at home, there'll be no fighting anymore. So what are the wars at home we have to win so we won't go off and fight?
There's a whole lot. And you know, the truth is, if we can get some of these things, or when we get some of these things into reality that we're working for, then we won't have to go bomb the world.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'd like to sing one in Spanish, which is.
We got to go, studio. We're a half
You
hour
want to hear the
late.
people united will never be defeated?
No, you can do that next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody who
Sadia.
wants to stay, I'll sing that one.
Okay,
Good
guys.
night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Well, people are here, so let me sing.
No, we need people to leave unless they're on the board. And thank you so much, Sudi. We'll see you next time.
Okay, so you don't want any people united to be
Not
defeated?
tonight,
Okay.
but thank you so much.
Okay, bye. And sorry I was here late, but it's my husband's birthday, so we had
I
to go
know.
out on a
Okay.
picnic and walk around the marina. So.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Night, everybody. Thank you all.
Buenas noches.
Okay, good night, Sudi. Good night,
Thank you, Sudi.
Addie. Good night, Peter. Okay, I think that's just us now. No, Addie is still here. Oh, Addie left us. Good night, Peter.
I think we're alone now.
Not quite.
I
Peter,
think
we need to have a short board meeting. So it's just people who are on the OREB board.
I think Peter's away from the PC or whatever device he was using.
Can he
I'll
be
put him
put
in the waiting room.
list?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
there we go.
Okay.
Okay, you guys, we did it. The coup failed.
So,
So
yeah,
for those of
so
you
how
who
much
don't know what
longer am I
happened,
in?
for those of you who don't know, Susanna, you did an incredible job, just incredible.
Yay.
I'm sure I haven't talked about
Friday,
my
I got
back
word
now.
Friday that Kabir and Javanka and Eduardo and maybe other people were gonna come from Richmond. And they came before and they hate Ben. And it would have been a little bit bloody had any of them spoke. Do you want to say anything, Susanna?
Well, yeah, and didn't Matthews get this ball rolling? He's the one that reached out and kind of got things going. I noticed he wasn't even on the meeting tonight.
Oh, did Matthew do that? I didn't know that.
Oh, I thought that somebody had said Matthew had been involved in it or whatever.
No,
I
but
know he's not a bit-
Matthew would have wanted to ask something negative also.
Oh, okay, all right. I misunderstood on that one. Okay, but yeah, no, I mean, you know, I respect RPA for a lot of stuff that they have done, and I like Javanka a lot. But frankly, they do not get to do that behind the scenes and come and hijack our meeting and bully a specific candidate. And that's why I prefaced Ben's introduction with the facts about anybody who is going to be a sheriff candidate. They are going to be a police officer. And even if you are the best police officer on the planet, if you are doing your job, there's going to be some freaking baggage somewhere because shit happens. And God, this is our first chance in Contra Costa to actually make a change, right?
Yep.
And to have the supposedly progressive people that can't. I'm tired of the left eating the left, right? It's like some people, like, there's so much of a litmus test. They're not paying attention to how things have evolved, how things have changed, and they just don't realize that there is no perfect candidate. There is no perfect person. We all have biases and flaws, and you know, you just makes me crazy. So okay, I'm glad you guys think I did a good job. I wasn't too harsh. Hopefully. So I wouldn't mind having a conversation with Javanka. Javanka was respectful at the last meeting when Ben came.
Yes.
I don't mind somebody asking a hard question, but this Kabir, I've been at too many things with Kabir.
I've had a problem with Kabir too, on an
he's
issue
out of control.
with.
Well, we all have.
Pamela.
Kabir has serious problems, and I know he was fired from Javanka's campaign because he's in the same boat in the sense that Matthew's in. Where
Did
they
anyone-
have a hell of a time communicating.
Did
But
anyone
we
get
can't
a
let
direct
people
message
come
from
in
him?
and, you know, rebel rouse here.
Yeah, Kabir has gone after Ben. Ben's like, he's like, I don't understand what the problem is. He's, you know, I mean, he's tried to have conversations and they just got it in their head that he's a bad candidate and they want to attack him on every front. The guy
And they can do that, but not on our time.
Yeah.
No,
I wanna
I mean,
also-
that's just ridiculous.
I want to thank you guys for letting Elise speak, because I know she wasn't necessarily on the first agenda, so.
No, that's fine.
Great.
She was great.
Yeah, we
liked her
gotta
a
be
lot.
flexible on things, on some
Yeah,
days.
exactly. Okay, guys, I gotta go in like 2 minutes because my husband is like warming up the dinner.
Okay, does
that I-
anybody else need to say anything? That's all I want people to stay for, so they know what had happened.
Just real
We
quick, I
support
think
you.
for the
You did a great
Susanna, you
job.
did great. Susanna, you were fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. I would recommend that one negative confrontational question gets through. It's good for the candidates. It's always good for the candidates to get asked a really harsh negative question. So I don't be too scared. Of course, we don't want a bullying, a gang up, but next time one question
Right.
is perfectly more than appropriate.
Well, and honestly, Mark, you asked a lot of hard questions of Ben. I mean, you asked him about prisons, qualified immunity. Like, you asked a whole bunch of the hard questions in a very polite, respectful way, I might add. So that would not have been the same had Kabir. Jamalka would have been okay. But that would not have been the same if some of those other people, they came just gunning for Ben.
Right.
My point about negative questions, I think is good for the discussion, but as a meeting runner, meeting organizer, facilitator, we ought to have the power to stop those and tell them to cut it out if you deem to be unfriendly or unprofessional.
Well, as moderator, you always have that power. Of course, Susanna, I am desperate to get rid of Livingston. Desperate. I mean, he's such a horror show.
Yes.
It's such a race. Anyway, it's a racist war out here.
I would probably back
Yes,
somebody
it is.
way less good than Ben.
Yes.
At this point, just to get rid of Livingston. He is a total shit show, right?
Totally.
He is a nasty individual. Ben is literally putting his career on the line to run because he is literally being targeted. He is being bullied by law enforcement. The Sheriff's Association is after him big time. Yeah, like, so he's like, if I don't win this race, he goes, I have no idea where my career is going to end up.
I have a time-related issue because this is an endorsement process. We only have 4 people answering the questionnaires: Wilson, Garza, Ramachandra, and Alfred too. So if you send a question out to people, remind them to send it by end of day to Tuesday night.
Okay, 2 more things real quick, Michael.
Did you revise it? Did you
Yes.
revise it?
Yes.
Okay.
Michael, real quick, Aisha Wahab reached out to me asking for a questionnaire. Has she been sent a questionnaire?
She has been sent a questionnaire. She wrote to me last night at 10:30 at night saying she'd like to come to the meeting, which is why I thought she'd be here. She's really nervous about the wrong people. The way it's set up, anybody who votes for her can read it, as can other candidates, the questionnaire. And only people who have that link, but she's worried it's going to get into the wrong hands.
All right,
And-
so let's send her one direct, an isolated PDF for her to.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Other thing for the next candidate forum, 5 candidates, no more.
Yeah.
You know
More than
what? We're
5.
going to have 40 sessions then.
Well, I mean.
You guys
seven
want
of-
to have one in 2 weeks and then another one again for our regular meeting? What
I
I
get
was
it.
thinking, we'd have one in a month for our regular meeting. And then the 11th, which is the deadline, we'd have one a couple days after that for the stragglers. I don't know.
Then
What do you guys think?
Okay.
I'd like to raise something for ORCC. I put up time cards and they'd say, you got 5 minutes left, you got 2 minutes left, you got 1 minute left. And then a red card would go up. And if they took a look at my screen on the mosaic, they could see that. I can send these over to Michael or whomever.
No, the issue is not the speakers, when I said 4 minutes, they're all very respectful with
Yeah, they
finish
were.
within a minute or so.
It's the questions.
It's the questions and introductions, a little bit lengthier.
People like me need to
Yeah,
shut up.
we need to tighten that up, and we can. The central committee, we usually give them like the candidates like 3 minutes, and then we do questions for a certain length of time. And I allowed a lot of multiple questions tonight for whatever reason. I sucked at like the time thing tonight. ORCC, we were pretty dialed in on time. We usually finish pretty close to our time thing.
So it's
yeah,
also,
I-
it should
I
be
could
good
definitely-
to, it's also good to limit the question to a minute or something. Answer to the
Yeah,
question. Answer to the
No,
question.
some people give a preamble for 5 minutes before they get their
Get
question
the
in.
question.
So we need to
Right,
make
which
sure
is why-
people understand that they need to be direct on their question and they have 20 seconds to ask it or something.
And the
like that.
answering should be also limited in time as well.
Yeah, there
And
were some
that
long
needs to
answers,
be-
so.
That needs to
Okay,
be
guys, I gotta go.
announced.
Okay, all right, see you.
I'll see y'all later.
Okay, you guys are all the best.
No.
I loved your presentation, Mark.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
hard.
it was great.
I was hard edged.
Yeah.
It was
I
hard
think
edged.
we have to get,
What's that?
we have to be hard edged.
God.
This is ridiculous.
Okay, Carol, since you're here, I'm gonna convert the questionnaire to a PDF format, send her the PDF, then she'll have to answer in writing. I don't know how to do a fillable PDF. I don't have a capability to do a fillable PDF.
So, but in
Michael, go
writing,
ahead and
you
send me
mean
the-
like
Michael, go
typing?
ahead and send me the file. I can turn it into a Word doc. I can turn it into a PDF. I can turn it into a Pages file. Go ahead and send it to me.
Oh, okay, that reminds me. Yes, I know how to turn it into a Word file. I have a pirate version.
Good.
Yeah, I'll send her the Word file and she can send it back to Carol or send it back to me, the answers.
Either one.
Okay, all right.
Okay, you guys, you are absolutely the best team around.
Okay, bye-bye.
You know, you do so much. Anyway, love you all, every one of you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Good night, everybody.
See you all later. Good night.